Hi everyone, Gigi here from Own Your Alchemy, where spirituality meets strategy. I've been going through an interesting internal process. I experienced another DNOTS, Dark Night of the Soul. I don't really like those spiritual terms, but it's what people can relate to, so that's why I wanted to reference that. This Dark Night of the Soul trigger happened probably about 3 weeks ago. There's 7 different phases. There was this numbness, disassociation phase. I realized that there wasn't a lot of content out there to talk about what I was going through. On a soul level, I recognized what was happening, but I needed to process it before I could share it with you and give you guidance if you're in a similar situation. If I'm looking down, it's just because I have some notes and I don't want to forget anything. Phase 1, the disassociation fantasy. I realized that one of my coping mechanisms to avoid feeling pain was to disassociate in the form of mental fantasy. I would imagine myself being in a different place, doing different things, having a different life. The amount of times I would catch myself and have to bring myself back to reality was alarming. It's as though I was a zombie walking through life, living out some other reality in my head instead of what was right in front of me. I grew up in a very safe and stable household, but I had developed a deep sense of dissatisfaction with myself at a young age. Probably as early as 12, 13 is when it really started to kick in. I would go downstairs, watch TV after school, and start fantasizing about getting older and having a different life and feeling different about myself because I had very low self-esteem. I didn't like the way I looked, and so I was constantly comparing myself to other people on TV and imagining maybe one day I'll look prettier, maybe one day I'll move to California, which I did, but it didn't bring me any sort of lasting happiness. It's as though I was stuck in the mind of a 14-year-old me, and I hadn't evolved past that even at 36 years old. So 14-year-old me was still running the show. She was the one having all the thoughts. She was the one spiraling and getting depressed and getting sad. It's as though I hadn't outgrown that younger version of me. So this is the backstory of that dissociation fantasy and how I started to become acutely aware of how often I was disconnecting from my current reality. Now, phase 2 is what I call the buildup. It's where I started to reach a fever pitch in terms of what I was chasing in life. I'm at the age now where a lot of people are achieving certain milestones in life, like having kids, getting married, buying a house. And I was just blindly chasing after all those things because that's what I was told to do. That's what society expects of you as you get older. And you kind of feel the pressure sometimes from the outside world, but as we'll get to later, the outside world is always a reflection of what you're feeling inside. When I was constantly getting triggered by the fact that I wasn't reaching those milestones, it's not that anyone else was doing that to me, it's that I was doing it to myself and my reality was reflecting that back to me. It started reaching a fever pitch where I started getting really out of control and feeling like I was so behind in life and getting so down on myself and constantly comparing myself to other people. It was just getting a little out of hand. I'm going to read you a little excerpt to share with you where my mind was at that time during the build-up phase. This is when I write this letter to my younger self to solidify what I had been feeling. Time is going to go faster than you realize. You're going to see people hitting certain milestones like marriage and kids and buying a house and feel like you missed the boat. You're going to feel those pangs of not belonging. You're not going to realize that life has so many paths and you can't possibly plan or know them all in advance. You're going to keep trying to chase that feeling of enoughness through relationships, jobs, moving cities, drinking, drugs. You're going to try it all and realize the hole is still there. You're going to try and distract yourself with binge eating and TV. You're going to feel like you're on the verge of self-destruction, like there isn't any further you can fall. And yet there's a part of you that refuses to give up, that refuses to cash in all her chips. And then you'll turn to spirituality thinking that can save you. Crystals, energy healing, past life regression, therapy, books, hypnosis. But you're still just running from the feeling of not enoughness and hoping someone somewhere out there can give you the cure. You'll try everything except sitting and facing it, truly feeling it for the first time, if ever, because you've spent so many years running from it out of fear. You're scared that if you face it, somehow it will consume you. Somehow it will drag you back to the dark place. That it will take you to a place so dark you might not have the will to crawl back up this time. Running from it is what keeps you locked in a chokehold. Fear is a powerful control mechanism. It hijacks your rational thinking like a virus. Is all fear bad then? No, fear is always trying to protect you. The difference is what it's trying to protect you from, a real physical danger or an imaginative one. I think it's pretty apparent which one you've fallen victim to. So again, this is where I'm at mentally in the build-up phase and how I start journaling about it, and I haven't quite figured out what feels so off yet. And then phase 3 happens, the breakdown. I quite literally have a breakdown. I'm sitting there one morning, spiraling per usual about how behind I am in life, something arbitrary has triggered me. And then this soul-crushing feeling comes over me that everything I had been chasing was never gonna fulfill me. And that just crushed me. All the years that I had spent chasing after these milestones and chasing after these things I thought would bring me happiness just all came to a crashing halt when I realized none of it was gonna make me feel better. And when I realized that I had been having the exact same thoughts that I had been having 10 years prior, me at 36 years old was still thinking and feeling the same way 26-year-old me had. So it's like I hadn't evolved, I hadn't changed, I hadn't outgrown that 14-year-old version of myself. And while that was soul-crushing and devastating, it's where growth actually finally started to happen, because I could start to break away from this disillusionment and this identity and these arbitrary things that I had been chasing for such a long time. Don't get me wrong, it was very, very painful, but necessary. So now I'll read you a little excerpt about the breakdown phase. And I'm referencing a book here, Psycho-Cybernetics, which if you're interested talks about how your self-concept dictates your reality. The way you see yourself is going to impact how you think and act and feel. If you envision yourself to be a loser and not successful, you'll never be able to act bigger than how you feel. So that's kind of what I'm referencing here. Psycho-Cybernetics says to assume the answer already exists now and let it come to you. I also realize as I'm watching these videos trying to become a new version of me, there is no new version to become. It's not separate from you. It's still you. So how do you embody the frequency now? How do you want to feel? It's more about a feeling you want to generate rather than becoming a whole new version. To me, new version implies that something is faulty with the whole system, rather than seeing it as an upgrade to the software. The product, the material, is perfect as it is. We're just updating the code a little bit to catch up with the new operating system. Old and new version to me implies that the whole system needs to be tossed, rejected, replaced. And that's why change can feel so difficult, especially if you don't take stock of what's already working. It's far too easy to assume the whole thing is junk and needs to be tossed out and replaced. No. Structurally, everything is sound, like a vintage piece of furniture. Maybe it just needs a little reupholstering. So now I'm starting to realize that there's nothing inherently wrong with me. It's just that the way I've been thinking is outdated and I need to upgrade the software. So me as a person, there's nothing wrong with me inherently. It's not that I'm not enough. It's just that the way that I've been thinking about myself is no longer working for me. This can't serve me anymore. It's done its job and now it's time for me to outgrow it. But that growth is very painful. Now we get into phase 4, the betrayal. This is where I start to think that my own mind has betrayed me. Because again, I realize I've been chasing after this version of myself or this vision of my life for the last 10 years and not living in reality. I feel like I've wasted all this time. I'm chasing my tail. And it's all for what? I feel like my own mind, again, has betrayed me, that it's set me up to fail, that I'm never gonna outgrow this, and I'm just feeling very hurt at this point, in this weird phase of anger and a little bit of resentment, and that's when phase 5 kicks in, apathy. Then I start to get to a point where nothing makes sense anymore. All the things that I used to chase and pursue that I thought would make me happy aren't. And so now my whole thought process is, well, what's the point? This is the phase that I'm referring to in the beginning of my video. This is where I started to feel very lost, very ungrounded, and I couldn't really find any resources to identify what I was going through. The usual distractions that I would use didn't cut it anymore. So some of the things I would do to distract myself would be, watch TV. Even binge eating or overeating didn't feel good. It didn't taste good. I didn't enjoy the food. I was just eating it mindlessly, realizing that this wasn't going to help me at all. Drinking. I wasn't like a big drinker, but sometimes I would have a couple of drinks to help my mind relax, or maybe some weed or something like that. And again, I realized that none of those distractions were serving me, so I couldn't even default to my old coping mechanisms anymore to help me get through this phase. One of the analogies I kind of came up with was that the old dictator of my mind, the one who was running the show for so long, had finally been overthrown. The city that it had been running had been destroyed. And now consciousness, or my new identity, is left to rebuild from scratch without the influence of this dictator anymore. And the citizens feel very lost. They don't know what to do. They're like, our city's been destroyed, our leader is gone, so now what do we do? So that's the best analogy I could come up with, is the old foundation had been completely decimated, and now my mind is scrambling to figure out, well, what now? What's the point? What is the point of anything anymore? What's the point of working? What's the point of paying taxes? The whole system and structure of society just seemed totally pointless to me. All I could do was lay on the couch, quite literally. And then I slowly started to read and walk and things like that, but there was a couple days where it was quite literally, I just have no motivation anymore. All the drive and ambition I used to have towards these goals in my life seemed pointless, because I knew reaching those goals wasn't going to bring me happiness. On a positive note though, I had kept one promise to myself, and that was when I had started antidepressants 6 months ago, my plan was to get off of them within 6 months. I said that even when I started the meds. It was more like a kickstart to help me get out of my funk. In retrospect, I realized that I probably never needed the depression medication, because it was my thought processes that were faulty, not me as a person. So if I fix my thought processes and the way I see myself, as a byproduct, I wouldn't need the medication anymore. I do not advise this for anybody, because I'm not a medical professional, but I did stop taking my medicine cold turkey. Now, I wasn't on a very high dose, and I know myself well enough that if I felt like I needed help, I would get it. But I did quit cold turkey. In retrospect, it was exactly at the 6-month mark of when I said I wanted to quit. And that just happened again as a byproduct of realizing that it wasn't that I was faulty as a person, it's that my thought processes weren't serving me anymore. Once I could change those, I no longer needed the medication. I'm not saying that's the case for everybody. If you need it, by all means, but that was just my own personal experience with it. Then we get into phase 6, which is the questioning phase. This one was tricky because the mind kind of came in through the back door. You think, oh, I'm getting more spiritually evolved, I'm becoming more spiritually awakened. That's a new identity trying to creep in. When your old identity dissolves, your mind is going to frantically try and find a new one to attach itself to, because that's how it keeps itself alive. It wants to cling on to a self-concept or a structure so that it has a new operating system to pull from. The problem is, even new identities, even positive identities, still have limitations, because you're only seeing yourself through a specific lens. If you see yourself as, let's say, a successful person who makes $150,000 a year, do you think you're ever going to make more than $150,000 a year? No, because that's the way you see yourself. Even in psychocybernetics, they reference this. There was a salesman who saw himself as I forgot what the number was. It was like a $50,000 bonus salesman. That's what he got every single year. Even when they moved him to new territories and tried out different things, he could never get past the $50,000 mark. And when he hit the $50,000 mark, he suddenly fell ill and couldn't work anymore and had to go to the doctor, but they couldn't find anything wrong with him, because his self-concept told him that that's who he was, a $50,000 bonus salesman. He couldn't see past that. So even successful identities have their limitations, which is why you need to be super careful to not let your mind jump to a new one entirely, even a positive one. Then my mind was scrambling to try and come up with new goals and new meaning and new things to chase, because my old identity was gone now, or dissolving. That's when the mind got really sneaky and was like, well, what if we try this and try this and try this? And I had to stop myself and be like, no. The mind wants to move ahead and jump to the next best thing, but my soul kept saying, wait, just be patient, wait. Which, if you know me in real life, you know that I'm the least patient person in the world. I had this inner conflict of my mind wanting to go, but my soul kept saying, wait and slow down and just be patient. During that period of time, I spent a lot of time going on walks, because I realized that was one of the times that I felt really whole and complete, and I would get some downloads and some breakthroughs, as I just really enjoyed being outside and being in nature and being in the sun and the warm weather and the plants. I love greenery. I just spent a lot of time walking, honestly, and reading Eckhart Tolle, reading The Power of Now, journaling. That was what I did in this waiting period. I still think I'm in the waiting period right now. Truth be told, I'm starting to get some of my motivation back and some of my drive. I'm not really actively chasing anything at the moment. I'm just sitting and waiting for the signs and signals to unfold in front of me of what I should instinctually follow. Where I'm getting into now is the last phase I call the stillness, which I mentioned is where I get into the walking and the reading. One thing I noticed too is that I started observing all of my old identities. When you get more into the observer role in your life and you're not as caught up in the thoughts and the spiraling, you can kind of take a step back and observe. I started observing all of the different roles that I had been playing my whole life. The role of the depressed, mentally ill person, the role of someone who's unfixable, the role of the emotional eater, and most importantly, the role of the spiritual seeker. So I also have to be cognizant and aware that just because I'm in this phase of my journey right now, I don't need to actively keep seeking out answers or solutions, because as psycho-cybernetics mentioned, you have to assume the answer already exists now. It already exists within you. And truth be told, all the times in my life when I've manifested things is I've been in a complete state of calm. I wasn't worried about it. I wasn't waiting around for it. Things just naturally unfolded, or I got a natural instinct to follow something or go somewhere or do something or talk to somebody. It just happened on its own. I don't need to force or try and change anything. I can just sit and wait and be patient. I don't need to keep seeking, because the more I keep seeking, the more I'm going to keep thinking there's something wrong with me, the more I'm going to keep thinking there's something I need to get out of, and the more seeking I'll create for myself. Because remember, we mentioned earlier that your internal state is always reflected in your outer reality. The more I keep seeking on the inside, the more I'm going to keep being triggered by the outside, thinking that there's something wrong and something I need to keep searching for. The last phase of that is that I realized that the business that I had been building over the last year was built on all of mind-made stuff. My business was built on helping people achieve things in the external. Now that I realize that chasing the external won't bring lasting happiness, where does that leave me? Where does that leave my business? Part of that apathy phase was me getting really scared and concerned that I had wasted all this time. I'd wasted all this time building this business and doing all these things, and now I was gonna have to scrap it and start all over again. Where does that leave me? If you follow my content for a while, I talk a lot about goals and setting goals and taking action. While there's nothing wrong with taking action, you can't just sit on your couch and wait for things to happen to you. It has to come from the right place. It can't come from a frantic, misaligned, lacking place. As I'm still processing this journey, I don't know where that leaves my business. I don't know what's gonna come next or what direction I'm gonna take, but it's all starting right now with me creating this type of content instead, talking about the internal journey as opposed to chasing the external. That doesn't mean that my goals won't happen or that I'm gonna stop having goals. It just means that my happiness and my worthiness is no longer going to be tied to whether or not I achieve those goals. For a long time, I knew that on a conscious level, chasing external things was never going to bring me lasting happiness, but I had to experience that breakdown where I truly realized that from an internal place that nothing was ever going to fix that feeling of lack inside of me except for me. That's where I'm at right now. Things are a little bit in flux, but I wanted to share my journey with you, let you know what's been going on with me, what you can expect moving forward, the type of content I hope to create. If you're someone who's also on the spiritual awakening journey, or you're having a dark night of the soul, or you've had your dark night of the soul already and you're on the other side, or even if you're in the middle of your dark night of the soul, please let me know what you're going through, what your experience has been like, and if there's anything I can do to help you. I truly believe that my mission here on this earth is to transmute my darkness and my journey into something that can help others. That was my intention for this video. If there's anything I can do, please feel free to reach out and message me. All right, take care.